it's thoroughly mainstream.
Oh, my tarot cards!
Sometimes I'll manifest things for my friends and they go, you said this and it happened and it's very powerful and I'm scared of you.
41% of Gen Z would say that manifesting plays a part in their dating journey.
If anything is perceived as a success, and I just say, I manifested that.
I mean, there are literally some spells and things that people are getting.
I paid an Etsy witch, which I think is a bit delulu.
Witchcraft, Witchtok has gone thoroughly viral.
I sit somewhere between being a literal witch, I'm not kidding.
When we see the deeper longings under some of these practices, we know as Christians, we have a lot to say about where you can turn for peace.
Crystals, tarot cards, manifesting. These are not fringe ideas anymore. These things have gone totally mainstream in our spiritually curious moment. It's not just Christianity that people are turning to. They're turning to all sorts of forms of alternative spirituality. And so in this episode, we're going to help you understand a little bit of what's going on in the world of alternative spirituality and how we can respond. And I am so glad that we have Katherine, our expert on these things, because I don't know a lot about these.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it is a younger generation thing where there has just been a massive rise.
You have to do this every episode. Just get.
Oh, sorry. No, that's not a dig. Peter, why do you think it's a dig? You should be just totally fine in your identity and your age. It's okay.
Live into being 50.
There we go. But younger people in this spiritually curious time, there is all sorts of stuff online about all sorts of forms of spirituality. And there have been loads of viral videos around different things that would fall under the banner of New Age spirituality. And I have lots of stories to tell you about that and what those videos are. But I'm going to use your language first, Peter, in that I'm going to give you some stats. I'm going to give you some headlines from news reports, because I know that's what you want to see. Is this really happening, or is this just an algorithm that I've got stuck in? So the new statement described Gen Z as the witchcraft generation. On TikTok, Witchtok, so hashtag Witchtok, has got 45 billion views. Manifesting has got 35 billion views. Tinder did a report where they look at all of the dating profiles of those who are in Gen Z, and they said that star signs were the top descriptor on Gen Z's dating profiles. And in their survey, they found that 41% of Gen Z would say that manifesting plays a part in their dating journey. So this is massive.
The star signs one is mad. I mean, this reminds me of Russell Grant, who used to do these things in the newspapers when I was young. So star signs are back, and people seriously talk about this as a key determining who they should date.
Oh, yeah, totally. Star signs are very much in, and moon cycles and all of that, where the moon is, what sort of universe, all of that retrograde stuff, that is totally in. And what's interesting is I think it used to be, I don't know what it was like when horoscopes were popular back in the day,
in the newspaper.
Wow, before the internet existed.
Yes, thank you.
But it used to be seen as a sort of weird niche thing. Like maybe you had a strange aunt who was into this spirituality stuff, but it definitely wasn't just a normal thing that anyone would do. Maybe star signs, maybe that was like, oh yeah, you kind of know if you're this or you're that or whatever. But when it came to like witchcraft or mediums or tarot cards, that was seen as quite a strange, really alternative thing to do, whereas now it's thoroughly mainstream. So we're seeing celebrities like Emma Watson, famous from Harry Potter, talking about how she uses tarot cards. We're seeing Dua Lipa, who's super famous, talking about how she manifested her Glastonbury headline stage show. We're seeing footballers, so it's not just girls, we're seeing footballers like Ollie Watkins talk about manifesting a goal. In fact, why don't we watch a couple of these clips? So let's watch Dua Lipa first.
People can maybe think of manifestation of this idea that you're doing witchcraft. But it's really if you set an intention and you think about it every single day of your life. For me, like Glastonbury, for example, when I first started making music, I dreamt about the day that I would get asked to headline Glastonbury.
I was taken back by the goal, but also I wasn't shocked that I did that really because I have full belief in myself. I knew when I was going onto the pitch that I was going to score. You know, I manifested it.
Okay, so Dua Lipa and Ollie Watkins talking about manifesting. But like, I mean, firstly, I suppose I have a question. What's the difference between that and just visualizing? Who are you talking to in manifesting? Help us understand this a bit better.
Yes, great question. And this is why it's complex, because for some people, manifesting is just a self-help tool and they would see it like that. Although even to those people, I would ask the question of what is the deeper belief underneath what you're doing? Is it just you have a dream of a future reality that you want to happen, and then you're putting things in place to make that happen? So you're setting goals and you're achieving them. That I would say, okay, that's a normal way of living your life. But if it's I believe that if I think about this enough, it will happen, I'd say that's a deeply spiritual belief. Even if you just see it as a self-help tool, you in communicating it like that, even if you would say, I'm not talking to the universe, I'm not connecting with a higher power, you by saying, if I think about something, it might happen, is saying my thoughts can control and change the outcome of my life. And based on what I do or don't think about, that will dictate my life direction. And then, of course, manifesting then does go into a deeply spiritual and obviously spiritual sense where lots of people would manifest to the universe. And it's this simply the idea that if you think about something enough or write something down enough, that it will happen. Whatever you think about will happen.
And when you say it will happen, as in the universe will deliver that to you, essentially.
The universe will give you exactly what you want. So it comes from the idea of like law of attraction. What you put out into the universe is returned back to you. And so when those things then don't happen, it becomes crippling to the person who's manifested, because it's like, well, you haven't done enough. You haven't manifested enough. You haven't done enough in your mind to then make this thing happen. So it's sort of a cycle that you can get stuck in.
I think that's really helpful because I think the sports visualization one, I can imagine people doing that, and that's part of what often higher end sports people do. They visualize the outcome. I visualize myself running a marathon and some wonderful time. I dread to think what that time is. But that then, so you're moving through, there's a kind of spectrum here of somebody saying, I mean, he's overtly said he's manifested that goal, or she's talked about manifesting being on stage at Glastonbury. And then you can move to the kind of literally speaking to the universe and calling that into being. And then the attractional thing I've heard about before. So you do, it's good things come to good. You think good things, good positive thoughts bring positive outcomes.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is so different to visualization, because I definitely get that with sports as well. Like I'm into like triathlon stuff and would think about the whole race and would visualize myself going through each of the stages. And that's a really helpful thing in like any sort of athletic thing, is to be able to visualize it, or anything, imagining yourself doing a presentation that can help with nerves. But manifestation is different because it's about control, and it's about your thoughts are controlling then the reality of what's happened. It's not a preparation for something to happen. It's not, I'm just dreaming about being at Glastonbury. It's I'm thinking this into being. I'm willing this into being. If I think this, the universe will give it to me. And some people would say, well, manifesting is just like prayer. Christians pray. Isn't that the same as manifesting?
I was about to ask you that very question, just to get that distinction. But it is about where the centre of orientation is, presumably.
Exactly. So in prayer, we are communicating to the God who made us and loves us and knows us and wants to hear from us. And when I pray, I'm sure you have this as well, Peter, oftentimes if I'm praying and asking God, for something or processing something with God, God will then change my dreams and the things that I'm praying for or, asking for or whatever. And it's a conversation with God. It's not me trying to bend God's arm to give me what I want and desire. It's, God, you're totally in control. Your will be done. Your kingdom come, not my kingdom. Whereas manifesting is my will be done, my kingdom come, what I want.
So prayer is very much about bringing our will and desire into alignment with God's will and desire. Manifesting is all about either the universe giving us what we want or us, and that's one of the big pressures, isn't it? Because it's all on us. There's nobody else to kind of blame. maybe the universe if you want to go there, but fundamentally then you haven't done enough, you haven't put out enough good positive energy, so it puts this huge burden on the individual, which is another massive challenge in terms of manifesting. So manifesting, crystals often linked to that?
I mean, can be linked to it, can be separate. Some people would manifest and not have crystals. Some people would have crystals.
Well, literally crystals are pieces of glass crystal-like stuff, just
like
so we're really clear, because I am less familiar with people actually having this. I hear lots of people talking about it.
Yeah, like different minerals, different rocks that would mean different things and have different outcomes. So if you wanted peace, if you were struggling with anxiety, there would be a crystal for that. If you wanted help in your love life, there would be a crystal for that. If you wanted, some like family things sorted out, there'd be a crystal for that. There's crystals for different things and different intentions. People would wear crystal necklaces, have crystals in their shoes. There was a popular shoe brand that made these trainers with like a crystal in the sole of the shoe. Some people would have them under their pillows, and they would just buy them in a shop or online, and then believe that these crystals have power and would change things about their circumstances and how they feel and their emotions.
So one of the surveys, I think it was Savanta did, but it's like, so 29% of people believe crystals, jewels and stones have spiritual energies and bring them. And so people often align this with manifesting, want this thing to be, get a crystal that's aligned with what they want, and literally carry this crystal. They purchase it, they get it, and they walk around with it, and it's giving off energy, is the belief.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to sound a skeptic, like I am, but I think it's really helpful for people to really understand what people are doing in this and how they're holding on. It's a physical object that they'll carry with them or sleep with or have beside them. That is supposed to help bring this thing into being.
And I think it speaks to the times we're living in. Like, this generation has grown up in a time of real chaos, and a time when the job market is really uncertain, where there's been all sorts of challenges and hardships, and they are spiritually curious, they are searching, and they are looking for tools to help. And so crystals, it might not be that they're like, I definitely believe that this is true and I definitely believe that it works, but they're like, I'll just give it a go. I'm curious. Like, if this could bring me some peace, I will explore it. Why not? And they're not being pointed in any other direction. So when we see the deeper longings under some of these practices, if we're like, okay, right, it's peace they're looking for, we know as Christians, like, we have a lot to say about where you can turn for peace and what might be helpful in your search for peace. And we wouldn't recommend crystals in that, but we could point them towards prayer or coming along to church. You know, that it's good to understand these things so we can understand the deeper longings to then help people on their journey. So, and
we want to unpack that a little bit more, but tarot cards, I think people might be more familiar, but kind of the Witchtok, I mean, there are literally some spells and things that people are getting this. So just that people aren't as familiar with tarot and Witchtok.
Yeah, so Witchtok has gone like thoroughly viral. I would say this is the most intriguing thing for me, in that the resurgence of witchcraft online is huge. I'm not intentionally searching for anything to do with witchcraft, but because of, maybe my gender and the demographic that I'm in, I get shown loads of content around, witchcraft, tarot, whatever.
Worth noting that I get shown absolutely none.
Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe due to my age or gender or interest, but like there is a distinction in what we see, and it's worth people knowing that, because some people might go, I don't see any of this, and like, well, we see very different feeds. I mean, that's one of the things we keep returning to. My
husband would say the same, in that he gets shown content about Islam when he's not looking up stuff around Islam, but because of his gender and the demographic, he gets shown content around Islam. So it's just interesting what girls are being shown, what guys are being shown. But witchcraft has gone thoroughly viral, and Witchtok is just booming. And this is basically people who would say, I'm a witch and I can cast spells for you. I can teach you how to cast spells. I can teach you how to read tarot. And tarot, if you're not familiar with it, it's a deck of cards, and you pull the cards and it tells you something about your future, about your destiny, about your life. So it promises to tell the future. And often they're really scary things. This really was birthed out of like Satanism, like it's all about demons
occultic
and devils.
Energy.
It is occultic,
but
yeah.
The kind of Witchtok can be casting a spell on somebody negatively, or looking for a sunny wedding day kind of thing. You try and get a witch to give you a spell to save your wedding day.
Yeah, well, you're very much on trend, Peter, because this was a viral video the other week. Two girls from, I think they were on Made in Chelsea back in the day, Bronte and Melissa, had bought a spell off of an Etsy witch for their wedding day because they were so nervous about it raining on their wedding day. So they spent a £5 on Etsy for this witch to cast a spell over their wedding so that it wouldn't rain, and it didn't rain on her wedding day. And this clip of her sharing that this is what she had done went so viral that I think the Etsy witch basically had to take her profile down because she got so popular. But then loads of girls are then buying Etsy witches for their wedding day. So I was talking to someone who's not a Christian last night, and they were saying, I hadn't really seen about the Etsy witch thing before. I'd done a little video on social media about it. But then she said, my friend posted about their wedding and they said the Etsy witch saved the day. So her friend had bought this spell.
Well, not only are people buying them, but presumably a whole load of people have set up Etsy accounts to sell the witches. It's just make up an AI or something.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some hustlers out there who do not believe any of this, but are making a lot of money off of these practices. But there are definitely people who deeply believe that they are witches. And from talking to people who were witches and are now Christians, it's, you know, we shouldn't just dismiss this as Christians as made up nonsense. You know, we believe in a spiritual reality, and the stuff that they're involved in is like really dark.
So I think it's two things. We definitely want to come to that side, that this is not just something to be trivialized, but also I think it'd be really helpful to understand how we got here. If it's not clear already, you should be following Katherine at Katherine Brown on Instagram. She does great reaction videos on this. But you do, it's really helpful for certain people like me to learn more about this. But I think we both are intrigued as to how we got here. Why are these things happening? And it's not, in our view, just a coincidence that people are more open to spirituality of all forms. There's part of this larger story that we often like to pull back and look at that's led us down this pathway. So can you help us understand a little bit, I suppose we think, why is there this interest in whichever form? Crystals, manifesting, Witchtok. Why are people so open to the spiritual now?
This didn't happen in a vacuum. It is all about the cultural stories that we're immersed in. And it's, if you understand the cultural stories, it's like, oh, it's no surprise that this is one of the forms of spirituality that is so popular. And at Being Human, we talk about secularism, individualism, and postmodernism. And I think these are the three stories that are really helpful to understand in thinking through why this spirituality is popular. So secularism removed God and then didn't fill the gap. People still had the longing for something more. It left people anxious, lost, and just spiritually hungry. So you have this spiritually hungry generation that goes, our parents are atheists, but it doesn't seem to be working for them. We need something more.
Yeah, so I'd often talk about this as the meaning crisis. Much as I love secularism, it makes you sound smarter if you stick an ism on it, isn't it? So you've cut out God, and that, because therefore we are no longer image bearers made in the image of God, well, where else do we get our meaning from? So we're left in a meaning crisis, because there's nothing that transcends, nothing more than this world that we can see and inhabit right now. And
then we get to like an individualistic story. So you in that story become the ultimate sort of authority, and it's all about you. You're the center of the world, you're the center of the universe, and you just get to do whatever feels right to you. So you can pick and choose and make your mind up and see what fits for you, and it's okay if it works for you and it doesn't for someone else. That's fine.
You do you, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, that, again, that's our kind of relational crisis. We are less relationally connected with people around us. We've seen the loneliness epidemic. We've seen that turn inward. I'm in charge. I get to write my own script. That's a heck of a burden to bear on your own. And that's where I think for me the manifesting thing kicks in, because it's all on me now to deliver. I have to bear the weight of my own story. Nobody else is going to support me in that. Yeah. And then that leads us to the postmodern turn. Yeah, totally. And then postmodernism, we see there's no single truth. Like, you just live whatever your truth is. Your truth, my truth. They can be total polar opposites, but they can exist together. And that it doesn't make sense from an outsider's perspective logically, but for people who deeply believe that, it's like, no, this totally makes sense. It doesn't need to be logical. It feels right. Yes, so we no longer have an overarching story. We've turned inward, and then we all have literally millions of micro stories bumping into each other. I think that's part of the reason we see such clashing in culture all the time, because you have your story, I have my story. Everybody has their individual story, and they're bumping up against one another. And there's no arbiter that says, well, this one is objectively true.
Yeah.
And then you can hold what I might consider a whole set of incoherent stories, but somebody else thinks maybe mine is. But we have this ability to hold things that don't seem to stack up. So you can have crystals and Jesus and maybe a bit of Buddhism over here and something else, and you just keep mixing them all together because it's your truth, and nothing is objectively true on this story.
Totally.
And so you get quite a weird pick and mix or mismatch of things coming together.
Yeah, and New Age spirituality, alternative spirituality just like flourishes in all of these stories. It's just created the perfect soil for this spirituality to go viral, to just boom, because it hasn't got any doctrine. There's no authority. There's no community. There's little groups that you can sort of pay to be part of, a women's circle here or some sort of retreat here. But really, it encourages you as an individual to do what feels right to you, to put the control, like what you said on manifesting, it's all on you to sort it out. You're bending. The universe even bows to you. You know, you're not below the universe. It's like you are the authority. It's about you becoming God. Like all of this just flourishes in the cultural storylines that we are totally immersed in.
And in a social media space, because there's no rules, no authority, there's no kind of hierarchy. Nobody says this is the rules of the game. You know, it's probably the opposite of Catholic Church. We have the magisterium and a one set of teaching, and they're agreed and universally handed down. This is right before people just come along, Etsy, and one witch does it, and then everybody goes, oh, well, I can do that too. And we just jump on the bandwagon. And so you get this incredible kind of pick and mix of ideas again that really thrive on a very quick reaction social media style space.
Totally, and that's why it's gone viral online, because they're speaking the language that people are immersed in, and they're like, oh great, they're totally naming what I'm feeling, they're totally naming the longings I have, and they say that there's a solution for it and there's something I can practically do to fix it, and great, I'll give it a go. But it's completely counterfeit.
And there are so many people with tens of thousands of views and so many people with millions of views. This is the thing in this kind of space, as you were given those numbers at the top, and there's absolutely no checks, balances, authorities on them. They could be, I was going to say legit, in one sense it could be genuinely witches, and we want to engage in that, or people who are just kind of playing in it. But I don't use playing, I want to use that in a way, because they're not playing. There is always a dark edge to this, is one of the things I think we both want to be saying around this. But I would acknowledge, I think there are still two forms. There are those who genuinely believe this and are really into the witchcraft. And there are those who think it's a bit of a joke but aren't aware that they're playing in a very dangerous space.
Yeah, and of course there's like amazing business people who are making loads of money off of it. And there's a mix in those business people as to whether they are fully like sold out, they actually believe it, or they don't. And then of course there's a load of people who are just dabbling, who are just giving it a go, who are like, I don't really know if this will work, but I'm just willing to try something new. But what I'm encouraged by is that there are lots of people who have been in this space for a while, have tried all the sort of alternative spirituality practices, have had the crystals, have manifested, and are realizing that it's so hollow, that it is heavy and works-based, and actually all of the things that it promised to fulfill, it hasn't, and they still have the ache, they still have the longing, they still are in a place of crisis, and often in more crisis than they were before they started. And for lots of people I've spoken to, it's led them to search for truth. And I've spoken to many women particularly who have found Jesus through coming out of actually the alternative spirituality space. And I was a few months ago at a dinner for like different pastors and leaders, and they just, you know, they put you on a table with random people, you're just placed wherever. And I ended up being sat next to this guy, and I was just asking him about his family. He's probably in his early 70s, and he was like, actually, the most amazing thing has happened. So he's a pastor, has kids, raised his kids in the church, and his daughter decided to walk away from faith when she was in her teenage years. She decided first to become an atheist, but then quickly realized that atheism doesn't actually answer any questions, and she still has a spiritual longing. And so she turned to New Age spirituality, and she ended up becoming a pretty famous New Age guru. She made a ton of money, and she was on like different TV channels about it. Like she went pretty famous, and she was deep into this world. She's in her 40s now. And he said that 2 years ago, he got a text out of nowhere. I think his wife got the text from her, where she just said, Mum, I've given my life back to Jesus.
Wow.
And after that, I was like, this is amazing. I'm so interested in this stuff. Please, can I speak to your daughter? And I've been able to chat to his daughter. And she just describes, this emptiness she felt in the New Age world, even though it had become her whole life, her whole work, everything about her life was so tied to this form of spirituality. But then she had a really supernatural encounter with Jesus, and she was utterly convinced that, he is the way, the truth, and the life. And she is not just convinced of that intellectually, but she's experienced Jesus for herself. And now she is leading so many people to Jesus from this sort of alternative spirituality world. But I think these are the times we're living in. Real spiritual curiosity, but this form of spirituality is so counterfeit, and it leaves people longing and wanting. So we have a real opportunity.
Okay, yeah, so you've really highlighted that opportunity piece, absolutely. And I guess, like, what are some of the challenges for us? What's the need for discernment for those of us often within the church? Maybe we're seeing people starting to come in who have engaged in this space. I know I was speaking in my own church and I mentioned this, and then a lady came straight up afterwards and said, yes, she was working in a women's refuge where somebody else was trying to bring in the kind of manifesting crystals to help the woman. That's the way the lady would have described it in their journey, I suppose, to help them kind of psychologically and to take them on their journey. And her initial thing was she absolutely could see the problem, but she didn't almost know what to do about it. Mm-hmm. As the Christian lady also volunteering in that space. And then our own prayer team were beginning to think, well, hold on, if we're praying into this, like, we're engaging in spiritual warfare in this. I mean, people, they are dabbling in the occult here, just to be clear. Dabbling is probably not a helpful phrase again. They are engaging in the occult. Mm-hmm. Witchtok is taking you into those spaces. So people are coming with baggage, and this is significant stuff to kind of process through. So I suppose just helping us think, how do we minister with this huge opportunity, people interested? I think if I've heard you, the first thing is when you hear people talk crystals manifesting, don't shy away. Go, oh, this is you're open, you're curious, but there are some things going on in the background to be alert to, probably.
Yeah, and it's not just new believers or people who are exploring coming into church with this baggage, although that is a huge thing. It's also some of the younger disciples in our churches who are seeing this content online. It's so appealing. It's so compelling. When I speak at different youth festivals and I talk about any of this stuff, the youth leaders, well, I think the youth leaders are more clued up now, but I remember the first time a few years ago I mentioned manifesting, the youth leaders were like, what? And all the kids were like, isn't that just prayer? Like, that's kind of what I've been doing. I'm like, no, it's totally different, man. So I think it's cluing ourselves up so that we can disciple the people in our church well as well, because I think a lot of younger Christians do find this stuff quite appealing and compelling, and we just need to talk about it and mention it in churches. But of course, whenever someone has engaged with anything occult, there needs to be a conversation about deliverance. And I know that from lots of the people I've spoken to who are very much in this world, were like totally in the spirituality world, for them deliverance isn't a weird thing. They're like, oh, we knew that we needed deliverance because that, we then saw it was dark when we encountered the light of Christ. And so we knew that we needed deliverance from the dark. And they would then go to whatever church they had then joined and said, we need deliverance. And the church would go, we don't know
how to do that. What's that? We're nervous about that.
What do we do? Yeah. So whatever that looks like in different people's contexts, just developing a theology around deliverance, I think would be a very wise thing to do in this time, and having those conversations.
And just having people ready if you're in a prayer ministry space, whether that's like at the front of church, some are more familiar with that, or whether that's the intercessors who are wrestling in that space. One, I think being able to name that from the stage sometimes in a youth environment or in a church setting, because this is real. People are looking at this stuff. Let's be aware of it and know about it. And then preparing teams who might be ministering, whatever that looks like, to be able to pray into that. And for some, I do think they need to know a little bit more. They need to be maybe reading up or finding out a bit more about how, within their tradition, whatever that might look like, you're going to engage with the principalities and powers in this, because the occult has a hold. It's a darkness thing. Jesus has absolutely defeated that. But we need to understand what we mean by that and what we're going to do to minister into that. It's not just a matter of, some people will immediately see that transformation, and that might be instantaneous, but for others that might be a longer journey. And I think being alert to that, because one of our colleagues was talking about a lady who'd come through the manifesting route, turned up at church, brilliant, encountered Jesus. It was literally the voice about the universe. She heard this voice say, stop calling me the universe, start calling me God. Came to church. But he also said a few months down the line, there was still a bit of managing the whole Jesus and bits of the previous life. And it was just the ability to keep picking that up in discipleship that might take a little bit longer, because some will have been immersed in this for quite a while, and we need to be alert to the hold that it can have. A hold that has been defeated by Jesus, but that doesn't mean that it instantly moves in their life.
And I think just because of the nature of the time we're living in, this spiritual curiosity, whether it is this type of spirituality or just other things, people have this pick and mix approach to faith and spirituality, preaching clearly that Jesus is the only way. That Jesus is the only way. You can't have a pick and mix approach. Now, that's an offensive way to preach, but it's a biblical way to preach. And I think
Amen.
it is so important that is what we're preaching in this time at every layer, in our youth groups, in our student work, to our whole congregation. You cannot pick and mix. It's not, you can't have Jesus and Jesus is the only way. He's the way, the truth, life. So I think just being very clear in how we're preaching and what we're inviting people into, so they don't feel comfortable sitting in our church thinking, oh, I love being here. This is such a nice community. I love having Christianity as part of my spiritual expression. And tomorrow I'm going to do tarot cards with my friends. That should make them feel deeply uncomfortable when they're in our spaces.
Great. We come to close now. We've talked a lot primarily about females engaging in this space. I know when I've talked to you before, you've talked about young men, almost the psychedelics can be a factor within that. It's not exclusively female, to be clear.
Yeah.
And with men, sometimes, again, you've got a bit more of experience on this. The psychedelic drugs can be an aspect around that.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative spirituality does seem to skew female. I don't have any stats around that, but just from sort of anecdotal evidence, I would say, yeah, it's mostly women whose stories I'm hearing, but there are definitely men, and we've seen men rock up to my local church who are like, I've got Greek gods and Hindu gods tattooed all over my body, but I had a vision of Jesus, which is amazing. But for lots of the young guys that I am seeing come to our church, and on our recent Alpha course, 3 of the guys had all taken psychedelics, and while taking these drugs had an experience that had opened their minds up to the possibility that there could be a supernatural, which had then led them to coming on our evangelistic course, which is just interesting that that's a factor in some people's exploration. And of course, there'll be loads of people taking drugs who will have spiritual experiences, which will lead them to all sorts of other things. But there are some guys that are coming along to church because they have taken psychedelics. So what do we do with that?
Oh, listen, this is some of the challenges. There's an interesting guy, Paul Kingsnorth, who wrote a book against the machine. When he came out of a kind of pagan, he would describe it as a kind of, I think, Wickish kind of background. So again, on aspects of that, has encountered Jesus, writes from a very interesting kind of, he was an English writer and has moved to Ireland, into rural Ireland, and again talks about his journey into Christianity, that again was probably a little different than some others. And partly we're saying that just that there's no single story here. While predominantly we have seen maybe younger females engaging in this space, it's not new. Some of this was trends in the 80s, the kind of new age spirituality. It looks a little different now. And I know you've written a resource around this that's coming out, just even helping people understand some of the terminology, some of the trends behind it, because we're really interested in this and really wanting to help resource the church. But also the pathways will look different for different people. And again, our ability to encounter people at their point of need and then to help minister to them. And I do think, again, just to be alert to the depth of this and the spiritual warfare aspect of this, potentially in some cases it will need to be engaging in to do that. So massive opportunity on the one hand, and significant challenges on the other hand. As always, I give a little shout out to Ethos. It's a tool that we built to help people navigate some of this spiritually curious moment. I'll give you your 30-second version of your pitch this time.
Oh, well, I think this is the perfect sort of resource for somebody who's engaged in this form of spirituality because they're open to trying practices. And we're saying, try a Christian practice and let us show you through unpacking scripture how this really is like the best way to explore faith and is everything that your heart is longing for and you are looking for. You have found something that's promised to fulfill and it hasn't, but we believe that Jesus really does fulfill those longings. And so Ethos is a digital pathway which points people to Christian practices. So if anyone listening has got friends that are into all of the manifesting crystals, whatever, and you're not sure what to do, there is a massive gospel opportunity. And I'd encourage you, why not send them Ethos as a first go at opening the conversation up about Jesus?
So Ethos is at ethos.beinghumanlens.com. So you dig around anything being human and you'll find that pretty quickly. 48 questions, starts to say where your values and behaviours align or don't align, and recommends a spiritual practice. And the idea is that we're very clear that's an ancient biblical practice that will lead people towards Jesus and take them on that pathway. And in this moment, it's one of a variety of tools that may be helpful to somebody on the journey. You're listening to the Being Human podcast. We're looking at spiritual curiosity in this season. We've had a real dive into everything there, crystals, manifesting, and Witchtok in particular. Katherine, really thank you for helping kind of expertly guide us through that. Next time we are going to be looking at Christian nationalism and maybe even kind of supplements and the supernatural with the predominantly, but not exclusively, men who might lean into those spaces and are often finding faith on journeys through that. You can find all sorts of resources on the Being Human website, so do check that out. And join us again as we will go deep into the manosphere, in a sense, and into Christian nationalism and what is driving young men into engaging in faith in the next episode of Being Human.